Good morning, guys. We are going to start talking about evolution today. If you guys have submitted the body systems concept map, um, one, if you have submitted from yesterday, I graded it. So if you want to correct it and then resubmit it, you can. And then everyone else needs to submit it. And then when I am done grading it, you can resubmit it if you want to make corrections on it. But that wraps up our body systems unit, and we are moving on to evolution. And then our last unit is ecology. And we have exactly a month left until school is over. Okay, so for evolution today, what I would like you guys to do is go to Canvas and do the evolution pre quiz. It is just some true or false questions, it's under practice and prep. And then also to do the classifying things, assignment two, which we'll talk about in a second. And then we'll go through these slides, and then right here is a link to the one page of reading, and you can take notes on it if you would like to. Okay, and then tomorrow is a half day, and then on Monday is going to be the Misa. So, things I want you guys to do, if you guys go over to assignments on Canvas, you'll find the evolution pre quiz right here, and then you'll find the classifying things right here. All right, so back to slides for a second. Well, not for a second, for the rest of this video. I want you guys to do the evolution pre-quiz, and then you can either work by yourself or in pairs or groups of 3 to 4. I want you to make a copy of this document, which is going to be the classifying things document. There's going to be 26 pictures on the document, and I just want you guys to categorize the pictures into whatever groups make sense to you. Try to start with really broad categories and then end up with more specific, smaller ones. Write your category names in text boxes, and then if you need to make extra slides, you can. So what that looks like, the first slide just has 26 pictures, one picture for every letter of the alphabet. And then I just want you guys to either I want you guys to copy and paste these pictures onto these other slides. Make as many slides as you guys need for your categories. And then try to start with big categories and then start to narrow it down to more specific, smaller categories. And then add a text box just to let me know what the category names are, what you guys are categorizing your 26 pictures as. So we have like a puffer fish, we have some magnets, we have a Venus flytrap. This is a opal rock. This is a like a sea-doo jet ski. We've got an umbrella, a hair dryer, a kite, some waffles, a tarantula, a yurt, sunglasses, penguins, Zac Efron, a rug, a xylophone, and then a bunch more pictures right here. So you guys can submit that under Canvas. Um, Going back to our other slides, you guys can pause this video, and then when you're ready and you've submitted the pre-quiz and the classifying things thing, we can start taking a look at today's notes. So we are starting to talk about evolution, and you guys just hopefully you just did and submitted the classifying things Google slide. You were classifying a bunch of objects, and we do the same thing. If you are an evolutionary biologist, you also classify not objects, but you classify things that are living. So why do we classify life and things that are living? There's this thing called taxonomy, and taxonomy is the science of classifying organisms. So why we do that is because we want to see connections between present life and present life. So like connections between monkeys and humans, or elephants and lions, or trees and flowers. We also want to see connections between present life and past life. So tigers and saber-toothed tigers, or birds and dodos, or chickens and dinosaurs. And then we also want to compare past life with past life. So all of the things that went extinct and that are no longer here, how are they related to each other? So scientists they like to classify things to understand the relationships among things that presently exist as well as things that previously existed. So another example, we could talk about humans and monkeys, humans and Homo neanderthalis. This is a ancestor of ours that no longer exists. Then we also have Homo neanderthalis and Homo habilis, which are two ancestors of ours that no longer exist. But humans and monkeys, we both exist right now. We know that we have some genetic connection between ourselves, humans and Homo neanderthalis. So humans still exist, Homo neanderthalis no longer exists. What is the connection that we have with each other? And then Homo neanderthalis and Homo habilis, they both no longer exist. What is the connection that they have with each other? Okay, so this is a little tree of life that shows connections between humans, which are up here at the top of the tree, and other groups that are genetically related to humans. So all of these guys represent a different Homo group. Homo means having to do with humans. And so these guys would be closely related to us. And then we branch off and we have an Australopithecus group, so kind of like primate-like, but less related to us than the Homo group. Then we have a Paranthropus group, again primate-like, but not as related to us as the Homo group. And then back here we have the Ardipithecus group, which is again related to us, kind of primate-like, but further away from us than the Australopithecus group, and the Paranthropus group. Okay. You guys don't need to know this, but this is what we think. We think that we are here in present time, and as we go further back in time, there are kind of ancestors going back to millions of years ago. Okay, so how do we classify life? We use something called the Linnaean classification system, named after this guy named Carl Linnaeus. And the Linnaean classification system consists of different levels of taxa, and taxa is just a fancy name for groups. So that's why we call it taxonomy. And the groups get smaller as you go on. The biggest groups, we call those domains. The next biggest groups, we call them kingdoms. The next biggest groups, we call them phylums. The groups under that, we call them classes. The groups under that, we call them orders. The groups under that, we call them families. The groups under that, we call them genuses. And the groups under that, we call them species. The species is the smallest taxa, and there's only one member in the group. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But to remember the order of our taxa from biggest taxa, biggest group, to the smallest group, we have a mnemonic system. And the mnemonic system is Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay. So we said domains are the biggest group. So all life is going to fall under one of these three domains. You are either a bacteria, an archaea, or a eukarya. Bacteria and archaea are pretty similar to each other. They're usually going to be single celled organisms that we know as bacteria. Years ago, we used to only have two groups. We only had bacteria and eukarya. So it'd be like single cell organisms and multi cell organisms. But then once we started to be able to look at the DNA of the bacteria, we kind of realized that there's seems like there's more like two groups that we could split bacteria into. So we split the bacteria group into bacteria and archaea. And we believe that we are more, as humans, more related to archaea than to bacteria. So, like we said, these are your single celled organisms over here, and these are your multi cell organisms over here. And we are multi cell organisms because we are made of more than one cell. So, we are part of the eukarya group. And we think that we are more closely related to archaea, which are then more closely related over to bacteria. So, on this little tree of life that we have, we're over here, we're the animals, and we can see that this orange dot is labeled as Luca, and it's the last universal common ancestor. So, we believe that at some point, really, really far back in the past, like millions, billions of years ago, there was a cell that we all have genetically in common, and that cell divided, and then maybe some of those children of that cell evolved into all of the different bacteria that we see today, and another set of children that came from that cell evolved into all the archaea that we see today, and then another set of children that came from the cell all evolved into the eukarya that we see today. But the thing I want you guys to know is that we have three domains. Domains are the biggest group. And so you only fall under one of these three domains. You're either a bacteria, an archaea, or a eukarya. There are specifics of what makes you a bacteria, what makes you an archaea, and what makes you a eukarya. You guys do not need to memorize this chart, but we can look at some things like bacteria do not have a nucleus, archaea do not have a nucleus in their cells, eukarya do have a nucleus in their cells. So we are eukarya. Bacteria do not have organelles. Archaea also do not have organelles, but eukarya do have organelles. Those are your like ribosomes, your mitochondria, your chloroplasts, um, your Golgi body, your endoplasmic reticulum, that kind of thing. The chromosomes in bacteria are circular. The chromosomes in archaea are also circular. The chromosomes in eukarya are linear, so like our little sticks and our X's, instead of being a continuous chromosome. Other things that we can look at, the phosphate backbone of your lipids, if you're a bacteria, is glycerol 3 phosphate. The archaea is glycerol 1 phosphate. The eukarya is glycerol 3 phosphate. You don't need to know what that means, but this is basically a table of basic characteristics of what allows you into this group. Okay, so under domain, there are kingdoms, and kingdoms are going to be smaller groups. So once we put you into bacteria, archaea, or eukarya, then we divide you into these smaller groups, which we call kingdoms. So there are four kingdoms under the eukarya domain, and the four kingdoms are your animals, your fungi, your plants, and your protists. So once we determine your domains are bacteria, archaea, eukarya, then we can divide this domain of eukarya into smaller groups, which we call kingdoms. And so if you are a multi-cell organism, you're a eukarya. And if you're a eukarya, you can either be an animal, a fungus, a plant, or a protist. And of course, our kingdom is we are animals. Mushrooms are fungi, and trees are plants. And then protists would be like your protist would be like anything else that's not an animal or a fungus or a plant. So, like an amoeba would be a protist. Okay. Um, Under your kingdoms, the next group is going to be your phyla. So, we had domains. We had three domains: bacteria, archaea, eukarya. Under eukarya, we have four kingdoms: animals, plants, fungi, and protists. And then under the animal kingdom, we have 10 groups, which we call them phyla, which is the plural, and phylum, which is going to be the singular term. So under the animal kingdom, we have porifera, which are your sponges, cnidaria, which are your jellyfish, your corals, and your anemones. You have this centophoria, which is another specific type of jellyfish. You have nematoda, which are your roundworms. You have arthropoda, which are your insects and your spiders and your crustaceans, like your crabs and your lobsters. You have your platyhelminthes, which are your flatworms. You have your annelids, which are your segmented worms, like earthworms. You have mollusks, which are like your clams, snails, and octopi. Then you have your echinodermata, which are your sea stars and your sea urchins. And then you have chordata, which is going to be all of the animals that have a vertebrae, which is just having a spinal cord protected by a spine. And so we are chordata. Again, you guys do not need to memorize these. I just want you to know that they exist. In like AP Bio, you might need to memorize how you get into classifying into these different groups. But we can kind of see at the bottom here, they've kind of started to do that. If you have no tissues, you're a porifera. And if you have tissues, you're going to be one of these other ones, depending on the symmetry of your body. If you have like round symmetry, you have radial symmetry, kind of like a jellyfish, which means that if you look at the top of a jellyfish, it's round. You could slice it any way, kind of like a pie, and the left and the right side are going to be symmetrical to each other. Versus if you have bilateral symmetry, you're going to be one of these other groups, which means that you can only slice us in half from like the front or from the top, and then our left half will be the same as our right half. Okay, so let's keep moving. So When we name our organisms, we use a process called binomial nomenclature. Bi means two, nomial means like name, and then nomenclature is just like how do we name things. We name things with two names. And then what we do is we combine the genus, which is the second smallest category, and our species, which is the smallest category. So, for example, the scientific name using binomial nomenclature for humans is Homo sapiens. Our genus is Homo, and our species is sapiens, and nobody else is going to have the same binomial nomenclature name except for humans, who are all going to be Homo sapiens. So, looking at our taxa here, like we said, our taxas, the biggest one is our domains. Domain, kingdom, and then phylum, then class, then order, then family, then genus, then species. And our common name is humans, but our kingdom is Animalia because we are animals. Our phylum is Chordata because we have a spinal cord with a vertebrae. Under the phyla, there's a bunch of different classes. One of those classes is being a mammal. And so, being a mammal means that we have hair, we give live birth, our children drink milk, we're warm blooded. And then, under the different mammals, we have different orders. And one of the orders is primates. So, other mammals could be like your giraffes or your horses or your lions. They're mammals, but they're not primates. So under primates would be like us, orangutans, gorillas, that kind of idea. Under our primates, we have different families, and the family that we humans belong to is called Hominidae. And under the family Hominidae, there's different genuses. And so our genus is called Homo. At the beginning of these slides, we saw other genuses like Australopithecus, is another genus that no longer exists. And then under the genus Homo, we have different species, and our species is Sapiens. The other species we saw were like Homo habilis, Homo neanderthalis, but we are Homo sapiens. So to scientifically name ourselves, we use the two smallest groups because they're the two most specific, and we put them together. The genus is capitalized and the species is lowercase, and usually the whole entire thing is going to be italicized. So we know it's a scientific name, so we are Homo sapiens. On the other side, we can have a plant example. So again, our three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Plants are multicellular, so they're going to be eukarya. Under the eukarya domain, we have our four kingdoms: plants, animals, fungi, and protists. This is like a sunflower, I think. And so it's going to be a plant. And then under the kingdom of Plantae, there's a phylum, and there's going to be one that's called Angiospermophyta. And to be an angiosperm, that means you are a flowering plant. Other plants would be like moss plants or like bushes. They would not be in this group because they don't have flowers. Under the phylum of Angiospermophyta, we have different classes, and this class is Eudicotidae. Under the class, we have different orders. So this is a ranunculole, I don't know how to pronounce that. And then we have families, and then the genus. The genus is the ranunculus, and the species is Acris. So the scientific name for this guy would be Ranunculus acris, using binomial nomenclature. But the common name that people who are not scientists would call this guy is a buttercup flower. So basically, this is kind of a rundown on how we classify life, a little bit of also why we classify life. Um, why do we give things a scientific name? The scientific name is going to let us know that all the scientists are talking about the same thing versus common names will change. So, like maybe in one region of the US, somebody might call this a buttercup, but in another region in the US, somebody might call it something else. So sometimes it can get confusing if we use common names rather than if we just use the scientific name. There's only one scientific name for every species that we know about, but there's going to be a lot of common names for a lot of animals and plants depending on the region that you live in. Okay, so what I would like you guys to do now is, let me move this guy. If you guys can go back to the first slide, and I just want you guys to take a look at this reading from the CK12 textbook. It's not long, it's only on this one page. Um, If you guys want to take notes, since I am out all week, that would be a good thing to do. It's not super, super long, but it just kind of gives examples if you didn't understand what I was just saying. And I am sorry if that is the case. Um, but you should also be able to try to answer these questions down here and see the summary place right here. So, what you guys are working on today is you should have turned in your pre quiz, turned in the classifying things slides. We just went through our quick lecture, and then you guys are doing reading and taking some notes. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about cladograms, which is once we've kind of classified our animals, how do we organize them to look at the relationships between them or among them. So that is it for today, and I hope you guys have a good day and that you stay COVID free. And I will talk to you later. Yeah.